justice for all.
Please remain standing for a moment of contemplative silence for our great country, its citizens, and those serving it around the world. Thank you very much. Please be seated. Madam Clerk, please call the roll.
Majority Leader Borgia. Here. Minority Leader Testa.
Here.
Mr. Boykin.
Here.
Mr. Burrows. Here. Mr. Gelfarb.
Here.
Mr. Harcum.
Here.
Mr. Jenkins.
Here.
Mr. Mazzano. Here. Ms. Marcotte. Ms. Parker.
Here.
Ms. Perez.
Here.
Ms. Shimsky.
Here.
Mr. Smith.
Here.
Ms. Breckman. Here. Ms. Williams.
Here.
Mr. Williams.
Here.
Mr. Chairman.
Present.
Mr. Chairman, we have a quorum.
Excellent. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to this meeting. We have some individuals just want to give a shout out to. We have the Mayor of Hastings, Peter Swiderski. Mr. Mayor, welcome, sir. And a couple of individuals that have been before us many times, but just want to welcome them again. We have Rose Noonan and Carla Horton. Welcome to both of you this evening. So at this point, Madam Majority Leader, calling you for a motion on the consent agenda.
Thank you. I'd like to move the consent agenda with the following changes. On page 2, item 7530, remove the Committee on Public Safety. On page 7, item 7560, add the Committee on Public Safety. On page 8, item 7546, this communication is actually from me, not from the chairman. Page 9, item 7551, add the Committee on Public Safety. And I believe that that is it. No, that was fixed, Honorable Legislator Shimsky. Okay, I'd like to move with the following changes. Thank you.
Remember, everybody, PG, PG. Let's keep it PG here. Mr. Testa. Give me. Yes, Mr. Mazzano. 1 minute recess, of course. Please don't go anywhere. Thank you. We lost both our clerks. It happened. Oh. Yeah. We're back. Mr. Testa, on the motion before
We
us.
concur, please.
Okay, Mr. Mazzano? Excellent, excellent. With no objections, then the consent agenda moved. At this point, Ms. Borgia for minutes.
Sorry. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I move the minutes of the Monday, September 22nd, 2014 meeting.
And Mr. Testa?
Second.
Mr. Mazzano? Yes. Okay, and again, no objections, so the minutes approved. Madam Clerk, would you please read the rules for public comment?
Each speaker shall be limited to 3 minutes. I'll call the names of the speakers and ask that you please come down the aisle to my left behind the black ropes. Mayor Peter Swiderski, Jasmine Jones, Murray Bowden, Ed Riley, Regina Riley, Carla Horton.
Welcome.
Thank you. My name is Peter Swiderski, and I'm the mayor of Hastings-on-Hudson. I'm here to speak briefly on the item before you later in the evening to fund the proposed building on 9A, which will house 12 units of affordable housing. My relationship with this site is long and deep. In fact, 17 years ago, it was this site that pulled me into politics when a ShopRite was originally proposed here, and I had recently moved from the city around the corner. I helped fight that project to a halt, and the land was later sold to the current developer, who has sought to develop it over the intervening years. Hastings is almost fully built out, and this is one of the last plots left in town for development. I speak not only as mayor, but as a proud participant in the process to develop this site. Hastings boasts one of the strongest affordable housing committees of any village, and we have an aggressive set-aside law with 15% of any multi-unit development slated for affordable housing, if not the highest requirement in the county, certainly on par with the highest. When the developer came to us with an earlier project for this site, he was only obligated to put up 8 units of affordable housing. Because funding for affordable housing is more difficult to secure when it is embedded in other structures, he proposed to break it out into a separate building. After many months of discussions and negotiations, we agreed to do so, as long as he increased affordable housing by 50% to 12 units. Facing concerns that this would feel like they had been bunched into their own building, we insisted that this building be front and center, placed between the 2 market rate buildings, and that it have the exact same look and feel as the other buildings. The developer agreed. The result is a compromise that yielded 4 more units of what will be very high quality affordable rental housing in an upscale development with access to the South County Trailway, public transportation at the doorstep, less than 5 minutes to the Hastings downtown, and 6 minutes to the Ardsley schools. With this project, Hastings will add 12 units of housing that will significantly supplement our affordable housing stock. We help the county fulfill its obligations under the settlement, but most importantly, we ensure that 12 households will have an attractive, affordable place to live in our village. This is the proverbial win-win for all parties concerned. I hope that you will seek to approve this culmination of nearly a decade of work and literally thousands of hours of effort by our dedicated volunteer Affordable Housing Committee, our zoning and planning boards, and the Board of Trustees, all of whom have reviewed and approved this development. Thank you for your time and support of our efforts on affordable housing. Thank you.
Thank you.
Jasmine Jones.
Hello, my name is Jasmine Jones, and I'm a Community Voices Heard member leader from Peekskill, New York. This past Saturday, we held the Westchester People's Assembly Against Poverty, which was a great success with over 100 residents in attendance. Thank you, Legislator Borgia, for attending, and thank you, Legislator Shimsky, for your statement committing to support our people's agenda. Today, we want you to consider working with us on our people's agenda against poverty, which includes the following policy proposals. We want an increase in funding for child care subsidies and after-school programs. If not an increase, then at least a minimum, we want to hold harmless the funding that is currently provided to these programs in the 2014 budget. We also request to expand the Citizens Budget Advisory Committee to include a seat designated for Community Voices Heard so that community interests can be represented in the budget process. We will be following up with you in the coming days and weeks ahead in order to make sure that the Westchester's People agenda becomes a reality. Thank you and good night.
Thank you. And we had to put the signs down just because the cameras are up, but why don't you hold them up and we'll all have a chance to view them? Excellent. Thank you very much. Welcome. Thank you.
Murray Bowden.
Oh, excuse me. Welcome, Murray.
I don't know what they call it when you do the same thing over and over again and expect a different result and nothing changes. Personally, I'm having a good time. I made some new sculpture today. It was moving forward. But talking about the things I've been talking about, safety and road lines and signs, seems to fall on deaf ears. More and more people are out there texting and doing things, and you can tell because when the traffic light turns green, nothing happens. People don't move. They're preoccupied. Information has to be consistent, the same, wherever you go in the United States, and it's not. And the people who control that, the roads, are traffic engineers, and they've been doing it for 50 years, and they think if it worked 50 years ago, why shouldn't it work today? It doesn't work today because we have the internet. smartphones. On that, I feel extremely discouraged. Last Saturday at breakfast after Yom Kippur, I explained this to my grandchildren ranging in age from 12 to 18. Funny, they got it. They think their grandfather's pretty cool with some of the stuff I... Some of you know what's going on, some of you don't. I'm trying to make the roads safer for my grandchildren and for the people. I'd like it because it will save money. Doesn't seem to make any difference. So personally, it's been probably the best month of my life. My grandchildren, more than ever came and helped us break the fast. It was his first. But professionally, and the ability to describe and to make you aware of the mistakes that the traffic engineers are making, I've failed. There's got to be another way, and I haven't figured out what it is. But there's Sally, if I might, wake her up. And anybody else, I'd like to wish Howard Gates on your Roots program. I realized how many people are connected to how many people everywhere else. So those of you who celebrated Yom Kippur and had a good fast, and I can wish you all a very healthy new year. And those of you who don't know you're connected, you might be. To you also, a healthy new year.
Thank you.
Ed Riley?
My name is Ed Riley. I'm from Croton. For about the 41st time, I request that the pro-abortion majority party, Democratic Party, investigate Planned Parenthood in this county in the way, especially in minority neighborhoods, and especially for teenage girls and women dependent upon county assistance, have been experimented upon and abused in Planned Parenthood clinics in Westchester, especially in Yonkers and Greenberg and New Rochelle. In the administration RU46, contra to FDA guidelines, and especially injectable contraceptives. This is the 41st time I've asked this to happen, and it has not happened. We know it's because of the alliance between Planned Parenthood and the abortion industry and the Democratic Party. But one of these days, someone will bring it up. Tonight, I'd like to address the so-called clinic access bill, which is being brought up by the abortion lobby, pushed by Planned Parenthood. The concept of regulating speech at an abortion mill is contrary to the First Amendment of the United States, in case you guys didn't know that. And the Supreme Court in June, in a 9-0 decision, 9-0, said you could not do that. Now, because Planned Parenthood and the abortion groups in this legislature hang on the slim hope that they can do something so that pro-lifers can't talk to people outside abortion mills, they're introducing this bill again. It's going to the most radical committee in the legislature, the Community Services Committee, right? We never got a fair hearing in the Community Services hearing. The only reason we ever got a fair hearing in the Legislative Committee is because we pressed for it, and there was a Democrat at that time, Nona, who gave us our fair hearing. We want a fair hearing in the Community Services Committee and in the Legislative Committee. Now, the Democratic majority lost that vote because one courageous Democrat, Nona, said, I'm not going along with this. This is against the First Amendment. Otherwise, it would have been passed no matter what veto happened. Then along came Bill Ryan. Now, Bill Ryan, if you remember, was fined $10,000 for keeping pro-life people out of this legislature in a federal court. And when we did get in, he turned off the water fountains, locked the bathrooms, turned off the air conditioning, and had the fire department count how many people we had, in spite of the fact the federal court said we could be here. This is in the tradition of the Democratic pro-abortion majority in this legislature. Now, there are two people in the past in the Democratic Party that are here now have flirted with the idea, hey, maybe we ought to stand up to the First Amendment, including the chairman here right now. Maybe this time around he will. Maybe this time a Democrat will join with the Republicans and say this should not go down. By the way, if you were here, the most eloquent discussion of the First Amendment was given by a legislature on this side, and every element that he said in his speech was copied by the Supreme Court. The same points. He gave it from right there. The most eloquent speech I've heard in this legislature
Mr. Riley,
in 40 years. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Appreciate it. Thank you.
Regina Riley?
My name is Regina Riley. I'm from the 9th Legislative District. The Aztec Pantheon is a few miles outside of Mexico City, and it includes 3 deities, one to the sun, one to the moon, and one with the name of Quetzalcoatl, the deity that is represented by both a crescent, black crescent, and by the snake. In the public school system now, this snake god is considered the most important, when in fact, when you ask people who know about it and that pantheon, the sun god is the one who's up on top. He's the most important. But that's the way it is. And not only that, they don't tell the children, oh, it'd be too hard for them to know, that Quetzalcoatl is the one that has the most infant sacrifices. Bloodthirsty as Moloch of the Canaanites, in case anybody remembers Moloch. The more babies they could immolate, kill, and get their blood, the better for the fertilization of everything and everyone. So, and the Incas down south, in South America proper, also believed in infant sacrifice. Now, along came the Christians. That all went away. And of course, nowadays, everybody who's a Christian is considered a bad guy, starting with Christopher Columbus. And yet, all of that child sacrifice, that infant sacrifice, blood all over the altars, went away. Now again, we have infant sacrifice back again. And it seems to be very popular to defend infant sacrifice right here in this legislature by allowing us not to have free speech, not to give women alternatives to abortion, not to let them know about if people have had abortions, to help them to grieve over this terrible thing that's happened to them. So of course, I just want to say, you're going in the wrong direction, especially people who are supposed to be Catholic. And people, if you're Jewish, that too, because you know about Moloch, and the Catholics should know about Nosotros Señora de Guadalupe, Our Lady of Guadalupe, who actually was stepping on that crescent moon, Quetzalcoatl, to stop him from all this bloodthirstiness. In addition, I wanted to say, on the Women's Equality Act, that big lie that you have Women's Equality Party, it's all about killing babies up to 9 months and letting non-doctors do surgical abortions. Thank you. And that's not for women.
Thank you.
Carla Horton?
Good evening, everyone. I'm the executive director of Hope Store, the very grateful organization that came to you more years ago than I almost care to remember, and talked to you about the compelling problem of domestic violence and how we were seeing teen dating abuse relationships that were just so horrific before children were even out of high school. And you funded us way back then, and every once in a while I show up and I say thank you, and today is that day. It's been an extraordinary month. It's Domestic Violence Awareness Month, but you would have thought last month was, because the entire country was galvanized by what we saw in one video, in one elevator, in one casino, in one city, in just one of our states. And what that did, it really highlighted for people the fundamental flaws in the systems that purport to protect victims and their children, because if a victim with damning irrefutable video evidence could not get justice and was betrayed by the systems that are supposed to be there to help her, what luck might somebody else have dealing with what they deal with behind the privacy of their own doors? But way back when, I came to you and I said, we need to do prevention and we need to do it younger and younger. So what we started doing is we were looking at data. We did a community needs assessment here, and what we found is that with teen dating abuse victims, 1 in 4 told nobody, 1 in 4 woohoo would tell a parent, but 2 out of 3 would tell a friend. And some of you said, well, that kind of tells us something, right? And it did. We designed a program that accommodated our understanding of how young people are and who they talk to when we launched a program called Love Shouldn't Hurt. And after 12 years, 13 years now, the 1 in 4 who told no one has dropped to 16%. The 1 in 4 who would tell a parent is up around 41%. And the 66% would tell a friend, well, they found a few more friends. Now it runs about 84%. And each one of those is a relationship. Each one of those is dealing with something so hard for grown-ups to deal with. Grown women, grown men, the gay and transgender people we serve. This is overwhelmingly affecting to women, but no one is immune. And I just want to say thank you. Thank you for supporting our program back when we had no outcomes to speak of, back when all we had was a needs assessment. Thank you for doing that. And that's really why I came and was planning to come. But then I was meeting with this gentleman about a week or so ago, and our agency was in the middle of this thing called the Purple Purse Challenge. No ice buckets, no wet hair, no nothing like that. Just ask your friends and families and supporters if they would support the Purple Purse Challenge, designed to bring awareness about the economic barriers to self-sufficiency. And 26 people within 2 days in this building signed up. You'll see them. They have little purple tassels. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Oh,
And
this is a report I sent to you by email today, so as not to waste paper. You can see it in your email.
and thank you to Beth Lobello in working with Carla Horton, who helped coordinate that wonderful contribution. Elizabeth Lobello. Very good. Thank you. Madam Clerk, any more
Mr.
speakers?
Chairman, we have no other cards.
Close the public comment session of this meeting. This time, I note it's after 7:30. Ms. Borgia, public hearings.
Move that we suspend the regular order of business for the purpose of conducting 2 public hearings.
Okay, Madam Clerk?
Notice of tonight's public hearings were published in the Journal News. I have proof of publication, which is available for inspection in my office. Each speaker is limited to 3 minutes. The first public hearing is from the Committees on Law, Budget and Appropriations, and Legislation on a local law amending Section 167.21 of the laws of Westchester County to clarify that the county executive and the Board of Legislators as equal branches of government are specifically excluded from the provisions of this section. Mr. Chairman, I have no cards.
Seeing no speakers, Ms. Borgia?
I move that this public hearing be closed.
Ordered.
The second public hearing is from the Committees on Budget and Appropriations and Legislation on a local law amending Chapter 167 of the laws of Westchester County by adding a new Section 167.201 requiring the Budget Director to issue periodic reports to the County Executive and the Board of Legislators concerning the county's year-to-date and projected fiscal condition as of March 31st and June 30th in relation to the annual budget adopted for that fiscal year, and to publish those reports on the county's website. Mr. Chairman, I have no cards.
Seeing no speakers, Ms. Borgia?
I move that this public hearing be closed.
Takes us to unfinished business. Please note, items 1 and 2 were held over from the September 22nd, 2014 regular board meeting and appear here as items of unfinished business for committee referral only. Item 7508 is a resolution appointing Andrea Rendo Esquire as the Town Representative, Member of the Westchester County Planning Board for a term January 1, 2014 to December 31, 2016, to be referred to the Committee on Appointments.
Okay. Mr. Boykin. Actually, this is just a referral. Forgive me, sir. Yes. Any speakers on this particular item? Otherwise, a long roll call, Madam Chair.
Ms. Borgia.
Yes.
Mr. Testa.
Yes.
Mr. Boykin.
Yes.
Mr. Burrows. Yes. Mr. Gelfarb. Aye. Mr. Harkam.
Yep.
Mr. Jenkins.
Yes.
Mr. Mazzano. Yes. Ms. Marcotte. Aye. Ms. Parker.
Yes.
Ms. Perez. Yes. Ms. Shimsky.
Aye.
Mr. Smith.
Yes.
Ms. Spreckman. Yes. Ms. Williams.
Yes.
Mr. Williams. Yes. Mr. Chairman.
Aye.
17-0, the item is referred to committee. Item 7530 is a local law adding Chapter 425 to the laws of Westchester County to ensure safe access to reproductive health care facilities and health clinics, to be referred to the Committees on Legislation, Community Services,
Nope.
and that's it.
That's it. We have item before us just for referral only. Colleagues on this, otherwise we'll take a previous long roll call, or we have a request for a long roll call. Long roll call, please.
Ms.
Just referral to committee.
No, she just modified the referral, but this is the vote to send it to committee of public.
Madam Clerk.
Ms. Borgia.
Yes.
Mr. Testa.
Yes.
Mr. Boykin.
Yes.
Mr. Burrows. Yes. Mr. Gelfarb.
Aye.
Mr. Harkam.
Yep.
Mr. Jenkins.
Yes.
Mr. Mazzano. Yes. Ms. Marcotte. Aye. Ms. Parker.
Yes.
Ms. Perez. Yes. Ms. Shimsky.
Aye.
Mr. Smith.
No.
Ms. Spreckman. Yes. Ms. Williams.
Yes.
Mr. Williams.
Yes.
Mr. Chairman.
Aye.
By a vote of 16-1, the item is referred to committee. The remaining items under unfinished business were all held over from the September 22nd, 2014 regular board meeting and appear here as items of unfinished business for action. Item 7316 from the Committees on Budget and Appropriations, Economic Development and Capital Projects and Infrastructure is a bond act amendment authorizing the county to issue additional bonds in the amount of $1,650,000 to finance capital project B042A roof replacement program.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This item and the next 5 were held over for want of specific information as to cost breakdowns and so on with these projects. I sent a detailed email on Wednesday, September 24th to the administration discussing my concerns. It's been a busy last couple weeks, as everyone will see why when they see the special orders section of this meeting. But I have not received more information, so at this point I'm going to recommit this item and the following items. And hopefully, now that we've gotten past some of our heavy lifting, I look forward to working together with my fellow chairs, our new budget staff, the administration, and the Department of Public Works to come up with a way of regularizing our dissemination of information. Thank you.
This is then recommitted just for infrastructure.
That's fine with me.
2 chairs, Ms. Marcotte, Mr. Smith. Forgive me, do you want to recommit as well, or leave yours standing here and just have infrastructure?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm just a little confused, and I was speaking with my colleague, Legislator Smith, here with regard to these items. It was our understanding that at the last BOL meeting, at the last minute, I might add, the information was sent and received, and it was my understanding that at that time, some of the legislators felt they didn't have enough time to absorb it, therefore, by delaying it another 2 weeks. So I have to say I'm a little confused as to why the further delay. I think they're good projects, and I really do think it behooves us to constantly hold them off. It's work that needs to be done. I certainly understand the need for additional information, but they have been discussed at length, so I'm a little reluctant to recommit. I'm happy to do it for one, 2 more weeks. I just feel like it's almost
Yeah.
it's a little abuse of power at this point to constantly recommit these items when the work needs to be done. And we're doing a disjustice, I think, to a lot of people in the county.
So I'll take your comments that this time recommit to parallel, but underscores the fact that we do need to focus on these roofs, and we need to have a continuing and active partnership between the applicable legislators and the administration on it, and certainly I and my staff will redouble our efforts, but it behooves all of us to, especially with some of the heavy lift as indicated behind us, let's get down to the bottom of exactly what's going on here, because these roofs are getting days older, not younger as time goes on. So with that said, infrastructure recommit.
Yes.
Ms. Marcotte, recommit. Mr. Smith, to parallel, to recommit, and then you can't, obviously, we'll keep them in tandem, but commitment on part of everybody. Let's certainly, and I
Yes.
emphasize everybody that we need to.
I'm committed to doing that. To Legislator Marcotte's point, when I looked at the information, it was pretty close to identical to what we had already received.
My staff and I will
yeah.
be in touch and with the
Okay.
applicable the chairs to try to move this along. Again, get to a point where we can make a decision one way or the other. It's a good project, not a good project, any modifications needed, things like that. So,
Just to that point, Mr. Chairman, I think, and I certainly appreciate the legislators' concerns with regard to that. However, there are 2 other chairs that are involved, so perhaps a conversation could have been extended to one or the other in an effort to facilitate the information in a far more expeditious manner to please the legislator. I'm happy to do that, but, we were kept in the dark, so that's my frustration. No disrespect to the legislator with regard to what she's seeking, but we were, however, kept in the dark, and we thought these items would be moving forward, so I am disappointed. Thank you.
I apologize to the legislator. Usually I'm much better at making sure I keep everybody in the loop when I do these things, but today it was a busy day at the office. Yes.
Let's all, good news is we're focused on it, and let's, again, anything I can do to try to focus on that, I certainly will offer.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
We do want to, and this board has done a great job of laser beaming in on lots of projects, and I'm sure that we'll see the same laser beam. Once we get all the information, everybody's confident we can do that. So item then that we just went through, 7316, Mr. Smith then will as well, right? All 3 committees recommit. Thank you. Madam Clerk.
Item 7323 from the Committees on Budget and Appropriations, Economic Development and Capital Projects and Infrastructure, a bond act amendment in the total amount of $1,550,000, which includes $250,000 in previously authorized bonds of the county to finance a component of capital project B042B roof replacement program.
Recommit for the reasons stated above.
And Ms. Markup and Mr. Smith, recommittals as well, okay?
Item 7324 from the Committees on Budget and Appropriations, Economic Development and Capital Projects and Infrastructure, a bond act amendment in the total amount of $2,600,000, which
Recommit.
And the other 2 legislators as well, okay?
Item 7325
Recommit.
Legislators, chairs? Yes. Thank you.
Item 7413 from the Committees on Budget and Appropriations, Economic Development and Capital Projects and Infrastructure, a bond act authorizing the issuance of $2,570,000 in bonds of the county to finance capital project B077C, Infrastructure Improvements, Mount Vernon District Office.
Ms. Markup.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm happy to move this for the Budget Committee and turn it over to Legislator Smith for Economic Development.
Mr. Smith.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you, Sir Chair. This project is for $2,570,000. It's going to fund infrastructure improvements at the Mount Vernon District Office. It's the rehab of the interior-exterior structure. It's for design, construction, management, and construction in conjunction with the replacement of the storefront, the first floor windows, and doors at the district office, as well as the structural and exterior conditions at the office annex. It's the building number 2 requires repointing and brick, and the work being done on the first building. This is the original windows and doors on the first floor, so it's well past their useful lives and requiring replacement. So with that, we move this on to infrastructure.
Excellent. Ms. Shimsky.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. I'm willing, as a show of good faith, to let this one through. As pointed out, the work is operationally necessary, and we did get a modicum more detail on this one. For example, at least a third of the cost, I believe, is on the windows and doors. We actually got a count of said windows and doors, and we actually got specs on the quality of the windows involved. But there was a lot of rounding in supply, square footage, and so on for the rest of the work, which suggests a certain haste and lack of precision with the estimate. My concern is with that level of rounding, we could end up with a situation, which we've already seen to some degree, that we have more and more capital budget amendments which have to come through because the estimates are off. Now, I'd like to say again, and I've said this on the floor many times before, this is not due to lack of ability on the part of our Department of Public Works, but our Department of Public Works personnel who are in charge of these projects has been reduced by over 40% in the last 5 years. There's simply not enough people to do all the work that needs to be done with the level of quality that they and us would like to see. And I'm willing to push this one through. However, we do have certain structural issues that do have to be dealt with, and I look forward to dealing with all of my colleagues on the various floors of this building to make that happen. Thank you.
Excellent. Colleagues on this item? Seeing none, let's actually take a long roll call.
Ms. Borgia.
Yes.
Mr. Testa.
Yes.
Mr. Boykin.
Yes.
Aye.
Mr. Harkam.
Yep.
Mr. Jenkins.
Yes.
Mr. Mazzano. Ms. Marcotte. Ms. Parker. Ms. Perez.
Yes.
Ms. Shimsky.
Aye.
Mr. Smith.
Yes.
Ms. Spreckman. Ms. Williams.
Yes.
Mr. Williams.
Yes.
Mr. Chairman.
Aye.
Approved 17-0. Item 7419 from the committees.
Ms. Marcotte, Mr. Smith? The same spirit of the earlier agreement? Try to move these along, but more information required. Madam Clerk, next item.
Item 7485 from the Committees on Budget Appropriations and Labor, Parks, Planning, and Housing. An act authorizing the county to purchase approximately 1.07 acres of real property located at 425 Sawmill River Road in the village of Hastings-on-Hudson, and subsequently convey said property and accept a grant of any property rights necessary in furtherance hereof, all for the purpose of developing 12 affordable AFFH rental units and related facilities that will remain affordable for a period of not less than 50 years.
Ms. Marcotte.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm happy to move this for the Budget Committee. This was discussed in length at Budget as well as in Parks, so I'll turn it over to the Parks Committee at this point.
Mr. Harkam.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'd like to thank my colleague, Legislator Marcotte, for her work on this as well. Many of us on this board understand the importance of affordable housing for the diversity and the vibrancy of our communities and certainly for the economy here in Westchester. And it's really a nice surprise when we have a host community that shares that passion. And we're fortunate to have the Village of Hastings that believes in this project. You heard the mayor before. We have a letter from him that we received today. Proposed development is important to Hastings because it adds 12 units of highly affordable housing to our existing housing stock. He talks about some benefits, and then he says this helps keep our communities economically diverse and our workforce housed locally. That's the big picture. We're also in the midst of a housing settlement where we need to accrue units and meet certain benchmarks. This is 12 units of affordable housing. We heard from the mayor and in the communications that the developer originally wanted 8. They got 50% more. So that was a win. 12 units, that's a win. welcoming community, that's a win. I've got to say, though, that to be frank, there were a couple things that were frustrating in this process, in that, a lack of clarity from the planning department and lack of answers from the administration in response to that lack of clarity. We as a body need information to do our jobs, so that is frustrating, but we will take that with a grain of salt as we move on. The other thing I want to put on the record, and it's actually a good thing, this body had a very heartfelt discussion about the appropriateness of how to best integrate affordable housing into the fabric of our neighborhoods and our communities. And the notion that the affordable units in these 3 buildings are in one unit. And I commend Legislator for Jenkins for raising that issue in committee, because that's just exactly the kind of thing that we need to be discussing when we talk about affordable housing. That goes right to the heart and to the spirit of the settlement. So with all that said, the committee did vote this out of committee. I support this project. I urge colleagues to so move, Mr. Chair.
Excellent. Colleagues, on this item. Shipsky?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This particular affordable housing development is in my district, in my home village of Hastings. For over a decade, a large number of people have worked to make a housing development that we can all be proud of onto that site. It's not a perfect site, but in southern Westchester in general and in Hastings in particular, we're running out of sites. And after many years of negotiation with the Planning Board, the Affordable Housing Committee, and the Board of Trustees, the developer came up with something that all of those folks could live with. I'd like to thank Mayor Swiderski, Sue Smith, and members of the Affordable Housing Committee who are here tonight, members of our Planning Board whose credentials are second to none, I dare say anywhere, and all the members of the Board of Trustees who even at the late phase of the project made this a better project by insisting that the structure that was housing the affordable units not be pushed off to the side, but be made essentially the centerpiece of the site plan with appropriate aesthetics included. I also think that it's important to note that just as we're running out of perfect sites in terms of setting, in terms of other issues, this is not, again, this is not perfect. It's not in the middle of a tree-lined street. It's on a road that's largely industrial, but it's very, very close to one of our main trunk bus lines. It is also within several minutes of downtown Ardsley and downtown Hastings. The children in this situation will live in one great village and go to another great school district, the Ardsley School District. I'm sure that there are many, many families out here who would love to have the opportunity to live here, and I urge my colleagues to support it.
Excellent. Colleagues on this item? Mr. Jenkins?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. First, let me start off by saying that the Village of Hastings, and specifically all the members that have worked hard, both the volunteer members, their elected officials, have gone through a tremendous process with the developer. I'd be remiss if we didn't take that time to commend them for all of their hard work, for being a leader. We have at least 2 other developments that I could recall off the top of my head in the Village of Hastings. And it's important to say village because from our political subdivisions, there's one that comes from the great city of Yonkers. We have cities, towns, and villages. And we have 31 municipalities that have an opportunity to participate in the affordable housing settlement agreement in Hastings-on-Hudson, has been not only a leader, it looks like they are doing more than their share, if you will, on this particular process. So 750 units divided across those 31 communities. I don't know what the village of Hastings County is, but I'm sure that they would be commendable in their number of total units. In the SECRA document that we received dated August 13, 2014 for this particular project, it notes, the current proposal is a modification of a concept site plan for 54 live-work units and 6 affordable housing units, which received local approvals in 2006, 2007. So this particular project was going through the process, the local process, and I believe that it was on our affordable housing list that was submitted as part of the original housing stipulation agreement. This is not a question on the developer. This is not a question on the village of Hastings' motivation. This is a question for the utilization of the BPL $50 that are supposed to be utilized to affirmatively further fair housing. And that's the lens by which I speak on this particular project. I cannot support the funding for this particular project. There are some pieces of it that I will support, because I think that affordable housing, I've been an advocate for affordable housing. There is no one on this board that I would dare say has more invested in its stance and taking stances on fair and affordable housing throughout this county. So I would look at that as a plus. The minus is Legislator Shimsky, the home legislator of the district, has done a tremendous job trying to explain all of this stuff to all of us. The 12 years of discord and various iterations of this particular plan, Chairman Harcum and Chairwoman Marcotte have both tried to give opportunity for discussions on this particular item. Mayor Swiderski said it best. The units, the housing, the 12 units of affordable housing would be placed between the 2 main units with 27 units of housing in them each, much like an Oreo cookie. I cannot stand here today as a person that has advocated for fair and affordable housing and reasonably suggest that placing all of the affordable units in one building makes good housing policy. And to Chairman Harcum's credit, not only did he note that this evening, he noted it in the committee room as well. This is not from a policy perspective what this great board has articulated as far as a policy is concerned. Again, this is not about the project itself. There are certainly questions and concerns about the project. I recall previous county executive Andy Spano said if he could do any one single thing in the county of Westchester which would help affordable housing, which would be to build sidewalks throughout Westchester County. This particular site has 0 sidewalks. And yes, it is a 5-minute drive to the Hastings downtown area because there are no sidewalks. So the folks that are there are pretty much homebound. They can get on a bus. They can get down to the local presence. It's on Sawmill River Road. The county does a great job with its public transportation in ensuring that the people can get around, but they cannot walk to anywhere. The Department of Planning came to our committee and tried to present that the people could walk to the closest mall, which right at 450 Sawmill River Road, walking down the block with no sidewalks, making the left, walking past the Life building. That's a nice sports thing for folks, going across Sawmill River Parkway to the opposite side of the street to the smoothie place, Verizon wireless store, or the gym. There is no groceries. There are no market. And that's not the developer's issue. It's a great thing that the developer wants to invest his or her, but their company money into this project, but they need our money, our $1.5 million to make their particular project work. And therefore, we get the opportunity to turn around and say, you may need our money, we'd love you to distribute those units. There would be no planning differences, 0. The developer told us, the planning department told us, Rose Noonan told us, All the units are exactly the same. So why is it necessary to put all the units in one building? The developer suggested that in the event that the units would become condominiums, that no more than 10% could be rental units. Okay, so quick math says 27 units, let's round it up. 24 people in the units would have to determine, raise their hand, say, I'd like to buy my unit, and then they might have a problem if there was an affordable housing unit in there and the person did not want to purchase the unit. That combination is where the questions lie. Not on Hastings on the Hudson, not on their planning department, not on the developer. It's on us as far as fair and affordable housing, and the problem that we, the county, has gotten into over the period of time where we did not do things to affirmatively further fair housing, where we, the county, our representatives now, all of us, have sat on the side and said, hey, this is a great idea, and we are in court for that. Now, in our documentation on the county's website, on homes.westchester.gov, there are several communications, not one, not two, like 8, from HUD, specifically talking about that particular process, which, Mr. Chairman, because of your leadership trying to ensure that we are getting the conversations and the communications to go back and forth through the federal government to the monitor, and having those established conversations, have been able to raise that level of consciousness and raise the board's level of communication with the particular folks in HUD. But HUD has said clearly that these kind of projects are problems. We don't do those kind of projects anymore where we put one building with 100% of the affordable folks in them. We don't do that. Whether it's a big building, a little building, it doesn't matter. We don't do that. And that, again, is why I'm not going to support the funding from BPL 50. Now, from our own funding, we could do whatever we want. And if it was the will of this board to take HIF or New Homes land money to do that, that would be fine, but that's not what the administration proposed. The administration has not used any funding for anything outside of the Fair and Affordable Housing Project as far as I am aware. And again, Mr. Chairman, I suggest that this item, and this is what I suggested before, that the funding for this particular item go back and have those adjustments made. Thank you.
Thank you. Any of the colleagues first? Okay, Ms. Shimsky, to comment.
I just want to make a couple factual clarifications. First of all, the area around Lawrence Street, which is in walking distance along the trailway north from this site, has a somewhat greater variety of commercial stores right now than the legislator indicated, including a nail salon and spa and a Starbucks, which are the kind of everyday things most of us have in our downtowns. But we are also going to have new development there soon. Rivertown Square is being planned, which will have a lot more retail, including a supermarket. The second thing I wanted to bring up was sidewalks to Hastings. There are sidewalks all the way along Ravensdale Road and Farragut Avenue leading down to the downtown area, as well as most of the recreation in town. And those are pretty much directly, I think they're completely directly accessible by the South County Trailway route that the developer proposed. But there's also conversations going on. If you look at the rest of the letters that were sent to us by the Hastings Planning Board, there is discussions with State DOT, who has expressed desire for a sidewalk to run down that part. And DOT is currently championing that cause, and if they put that public sidewalk there, everything will be completely accessible by sidewalk. Thank you.
Thank you for those clarifications. Any other colleagues? Mr. Williams.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I just wanted to, for the record, more or less set forth why I will support the legislation. I do have some concerns, clearly, about the fact that the point Mr. Jenkins made about the buildings being separated and the affordable housing being in one building versus the non-affordable housing or the market-based housing are in another building. But what I have learned and got a chance to understand is that the affordable housing will not be isolated, but will be in the center of the development, which, other than being in the same building, means that it's in a prime location. The second reason is that I believe that the other concern I have was with respect to the conversion, and this is my greater concern than being in the same building. My greater concern is that if there is going to be conversion to home ownership, that the same opportunities be awarded to those who own affordable or rent affordable housing, so they might also achieve a part of the American dream. And that the economic, I know that when this question was raised in the committee room, the Deputy Planning Commissioner indicated that the reason why that would not be done was because of the present economic circumstances of being able to obtain loans. But this conversion element is not going to occur for years, and none of us can predict what the economic circumstances are going to be in 10, 20 years, even 30 years from now. So I believe that that particular point needs to be really looked at as we construct housing, because we want to make, I understand that communities want to balance their ownership and rentals, but however, once you embark upon a plan to allow conversions to homeowners within a development, you have to allow that equally. And if the economic circumstances work out, then so be it. If it doesn't work out, then the person would not be able to convert. But that's the point I have. I think the 2 points, the point about the concern about how the project is really situated will ultimately be determined by the monitor. The federal monitor has to review this project, and he has to determine whether or not it qualifies under our affordable housing stipulation. And within that stipulation, there are clauses that require us to not have clustered or segregated housing. And I believe that, I trust that his analysis or his judgment has been pretty good so far, and I'm going to defer to him ultimately to make the decision on this. So regardless of how we vote, there is ultimately going to be someone overseeing this. If it does not pass the test, then it will not be built because the funding could not be used. And so that's the reason why I will support this moving forward, because I know that there is another process by which any concerns will be checked. Thank you.
Excellent. The colleagues on this item. Mr. Smith.
I rise in some place to support my fellow legislator, Mr. Jenkins, but I will be voting in favor of this. The concept goes back to the affordable housing settlement itself. Those who were in this chamber at the time who voted in favor of it, and there were a number of people who voted against it, those who voted against it have raised a number of great fears as to what the worst possible consequences of voting in favor of the affordable housing settlement would be. As I've said multiple times before, and I welcome the opportunity to say it again, the greatest impediment to affordable housing in Westchester County now is the affordable housing settlement itself. We are being forced into decisions here now that are not necessarily in the best interest of public planning. The fact that we are obligated to create 750 units in 7 years under the constraints as laid out in the settlement do not make us behave in a manner that lends to good public planning. The issue that we're dealing here now with Hastings is going to be the same exact issue should it come in front of us again with the Conifer project in Newcastle. Again, a building that's going to be solely for the purposes of affordable housing. So we're going to be facing that issue all over again. But it is in an area that was targeted by HUD as one of the communities that needs affordable housing. The one thing I think in unison that the 17 of us would all agree on is that Westchester County does need affordable housing. And I would think that probably 17 of us, or at least most of 17 of us, agree that there's a role for government to play in that regard. We had some very unfortunate news this week, or last week, from HUD, who came out and came across and stated that the last of, essentially the 8.5 or the 9th analysis of impediment that came through was unsatisfactory, and they want their ever-increasing list of communities to be under the gun. We have an issue here now in this particular county where we're needing to make decisions to comply with the agreement that this Board of Legislators at the time approved and that the county executive, Spano, at that time approved. And that's not necessarily in the best interest of grand planning for the county at this point. But it's the obligation. I don't think any, even for those who dislike the settlement at this point, say that this settlement needs to be complied with and complied with in a way. The concept of putting sidewalks throughout, throughout Westchester County. Yeah, nice, interesting idea. The fact of the matter is it doesn't lay out like that. And when we start dealing with communities in northern county where we're really restricted not only as to access and move, but some of these communities are listed as part of the 31 targeted communities. So we need, in essence, there'll be an expectation that we check the box in that regard to place things in there, with or without sidewalks. And in the same regard, with or without sewer systems there, the same issue. This is the problem. We have a Washington, D.C. Bureaucratic group that is applying these standards here in a statistical type manner, and in the essence, they're laying two-dimensional information in a three-dimensional universe that we're living in. So this is a problem. So I understand, and I think Legislator Jenkins raises some very good points, some issues that that in essence I agree with from an overall global planning perspective. That being said, I think the overriding issue that we have here is a settlement that this county has committed to fulfill. We have a benchmark that needs to be met by December 31st of this year, and next year and the year following in order to get to 750. So it's a challenging time. It's unfortunate. The concerns about the affordable housing settlement are coming home to roost at this point in time now. And as we go further and further into the years on this program, I think we're going to be faced with more of these sort of unpalatable type decisions and deciding whether we're going to comply with the settlement that was agreed to by this county or not. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Smith. Any colleagues on this item? Invoking second, I will.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I just rose under the Rogowski rule.
But the Rogowski rules, I recall, was not in the positive vein. This is the corollary to
well, we can have the amendment on the Rogowski rule if we would. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Two things. In my hand right now, I have a little map of the things. I'm sorry that everyone can't see this. I will send it out again, which shows the site. By the way, I didn't mention the fact that, they have some really quiet neighbors because to the south is the cemetery of this particular process, right? So it's across the road.
With the chair, if you will, please, everyone.
But certainly, again, in an industrial zone. And while I know for many people, Starbucks is what they run on, it is not a staple. And last time I checked that you need other groceries, and for all of our green folks and healthy food folks, that is not a good choice. And certainly, we are all hopeful that one day that the Rivertown Square development will be developed, but that's not today. And we're approving this project. It's in front of us today to be able to deal with. And unless someone can show on a map, and again, I have a nice satellite image of the map and the surrounding areas on 9A, we know there are no roads, there are no sidewalks. There's no sidewalks. There's no sidewalks to go down the street, and hopefully one day there would be, but that day's not today. Again, the Hastings folks, the developer, did not tell us anything but the truth in this particular regard. And while Mr. Smith and I are going to agree tonight on many items, right, that I would respectfully disagree that we don't have the opportunity to we have the opportunity not to just blindly stamp off on things in the effort to get the check mark that's necessary to complete the 750 units. One of the things that some of us understand, and whether we agree with that or not, this is not about 750 units. It's about setting a policy for how you develop and affirmatively further fair housing. And I know that that's an unpopular position. Folks would just like to get out from under the order and say that we're never going to have to deal with any federal regulations again. Well, as long as we're in the United States and we accept $1 for specific programs that require an analysis of impediments document to be completed, whether that's home funds, whether that's some of our social services funds, whether that's community development block grant funds, we are still going to be under this court order of this ongoing obligation to affirmatively further fair housing. So again, Mr. Chairman, on this particular item, we have come up with creative solutions in the past to make sure that we take advantage of the scenarios that are presented to us. And whether that's working with our friends in the north in trying to help develop solutions for the septic problems and wastewater treatment, or down here in the lower part of Westchester where we need more rental housing. This project, again, I could support the project in concept, but not say where the money is coming from is appropriate. The developer has their own money, they could build what they want. But if they would like our money to do this, that's where the concern is. Thank you so much, Mr. Chairman.
Excellent. Ladies and gentlemen, let's go to a long roll call since the legislators have spoken once and many second time. So on this item, great discussion, but let's call the roll if you would, please.
Ms. Borgia?
Yes.
Mr. Testa?
Yes.
Mr. Boykin?
Yes.
Mr. Gelfarb?
Aye.
Mr. Harkam?
Yep.
Mr. Jenkins?
Yes.
Mr. Mazzano? Yes. Ms. Marcotte?
Aye.
Ms. Parker?
Yes.
Ms. Perez?
Yes.
Ms. Shimsky?
Aye.
Mr. Smith?
Yes.
Ms. Spreckman? Ms. Williams?
Yes.
Mr. Williams? Mr. Chairman?
Aye.
Approved 17-0. Item 7486 from the Committees on Budget and Appropriations and Labor, Parks, Planning, and Housing, a bond act authorizing the issuance of $720,000 in bonds of the county to finance capital project BPL 50 Fair Affordable Housing Acquisition Financing 425 Sawmill River Road.
Ms. Marcotte, and so discussed or so moved would be a very
So moved.
comment at this time.
As discussed, so moved, and could we please have a long roll call vote, Mr. Chairman?
Absolutely. Before that, do we have any colleagues on this? Otherwise, we'll go right to the long roll call. Please, Madam Clerk.
Ms. Borgia?
Yes.
Mr. Testa?
Yes.
Mr. Boykin?
Yes.
Mr. Gelfarb?
Aye.
Mr. Harkam?
Yes.
Mr. Jenkins?
No.
Mr. Mazzano? Yes. Ms. Marcotte?
Aye.
Ms. Parker?
Yes.
Ms. Perez? Yes. Ms. Shimsky?
Aye.
Mr. Smith?
Yes.
Ms. Spreckman? Ms. Williams?
Yes.
Mr. Williams?
Yes.
Mr. Chairman?
Aye.
Approved 16-1. Item 7487 from the Committees on Budget and Appropriations and Labor, Parks, Planning, and Housing, a bond act authorizing the issuance of $446,000 in bonds of the county to finance capital project BPL 50 Fair Affordable Housing Infrastructure Financing 425 Sawmill River Road.
Ms. Marcotte.
So moved.
As previously discussed, so moved, and request a long roll call. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Madam Clerk.
Ms. Borgia?
Yes.
Mr. Testa?
Yes.
Mr. Boykin?
Yes.
Mr. Gelfarb?
Aye.
Mr. Harkam?
Yes.
Mr. Jenkins?
No.
Mr. Mazzano? Yes. Ms. Marcotte?
Aye.
Ms. Parker?
Yes.
Ms. Perez? Ms. Shimsky?
Aye.
Mr. Smith?
Yes.
Ms. Spreckman? Ms. Williams?
Yes.
Mr. Williams?
Yes.
Mr. Chairman?
Aye.
Approved 16-1. Item 7488 from the Committees on Budget and Appropriations and Labor, Parks, Planning, and Housing, an act authorizing the county to enter into an intermunicipal agreement with the Village of Hastings-on-Hudson to fund certain infrastructure improvements which will be in support of the development of affordable housing to be located at 425 Sawmill River Road, and to accept and/or release any property rights necessary in furtherance hereof.
Ms. Marcotte.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. For budget, so moved.
Mr. Harkam?
As previously discussed, so moved.
And a long roll call, please.
Yes.
Ms. Borgia?
Yes.
Mr. Testa?
Yes.
Mr. Boykin?
Yes.
Mr. Gelfarb?
Aye.
Mr. Harkam?
Yes.
Mr. Jenkins?
Yes.
Mr. Maizano? Ms. Marcotte?
Aye.
Ms. Parker?
Yes.
Ms. Perez? Ms. Shimsky?
Aye.
Mr. Smith?
Yes.
Ms. Spreckman? Ms. Williams?
Yes.
Mr. Williams?
Yes.
Mr. Chairman?
Aye.
Approved 17-0. Takes us to standing committees. Item 7226 from the Committees on Infrastructure, Budget and Appropriations, and Economic Development and Capital Projects. A bond act authorizing the issuance of $800,000 in bonds of the county to finance capital project RB 141 overhead sign structure replacements, various locations.
Ms. Markup?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This was discussed in the Budget Committee at length, along with DPW and Law Department. I'm happy to move it and turn it over to Economic Development.
Mr. Smith?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This is an $800,000 project which is going to fund a design replacement of overhead signs. It's approximately 24 signs that are out there. There was much discussion as to who had responsibility for the signs. As it turned out at the end of the discussions, the general sense was that the county was responsible for replacing these signs. Thank you. With that, we move it on to infrastructure.
Ms. Shimsky?
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. These signs, the list I got had 31, Michael. They are in various states of repair and disrepair. DPW did send down to us the latest inspection reports for each and every one of them. Some of them are in pretty bad shape, as you could tell by driving under them and looking. At this point, we can be satisfied that the information exists to authorize bonding. We have ample reason to believe now that the signs are actually our responsibility, and that a large number of them at least are going to require substantial work. So we look forward to this moving ahead and to the construction bond to come. So moved.
Excellent. Colleagues on this item?
Mike, Mr. Chairman?
Yes, Mr. Smith.
Yeah, just to clarify the point, the August 27th letter from from the State Department of Transportation to County Attorney Meehan did refer to 24 signs that were in question, and those are the ones in question, and 31 is the one in total. So thank you for the clarification.
Excellent. Colleagues on this? Otherwise, let's take a long roll call.
Ms. Borgia?
Yes.
Mr. Testa?
Yes.
Mr. Boykin?
Yes.
Mr. Burrows? Mr. Gelfarb?
Aye.
Mr. Harkam?
Yes.
Mr. Jenkins?
Yes.
Mr. Maizano? Ms. Marcotte?
Aye.
Ms. Parker?
Yes.
Ms. Perez?
Yes.
Ms. Shimsky?
Aye.
Mr. Smith?
Yes.
Ms. Spreckman? Ms. Williams?
Yes.
Mr. Williams?
Yes.
Mr. Chairman?
Aye.
Approved 17-0. Item 7345 from the Committees on Law, Budget Appropriations, and Legislation. A local law amending Section 167.21 of the laws of Westchester County to clarify that the county executive and the Board of Legislators as equal branches of government are specifically excluded from the provisions of this section.
Ms. Markup?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. For the Budget Committee, so moved. Again, this was a topic with lengthy discussion, and I will turn it over to the Legislation Department. Legislation Committee, excuse me.
The Legislation
Perez?
Department. Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, Ms. Markey.
We're not departments.
Are we going to vote on that? Thank you, Mr. Chair. This was a recommendation from the Charter Revision Commission, and I want to thank them actually for all their hard work. And we did have a very lengthy discussion in the Committee of Legislation, and in that discussion, it was stated that this law is clarifying that the county executive and the Board of Legislators are equal branches of government and are not subject or bound to the limitations or restrictions of Section 167.21, and therefore are not restricted, limited, or prohibited from additions to of projects or funding to the capital budget during the county budget process. However, it was also brought up in the discussion that while the county executive and the Board of Legislators are especially excluded from this section, they should follow the administrative capital project submission process required by law. So moved.
Excellent. And Mr. Williams?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I want to, the provision that is in question here is section 167.21, and part of the section clearly identifies several departments and institutions that are subject to deadlines in terms of the capital and operating budgets. The section specifically refers to office departments, institutions, office and agencies of the county, and there were questions as to whether or not the Board of Legislators fell within one of these categories in the county charter in this particular section. After much discussion as we heard from both committees, and the recommendation of the Charter Committee, we decided that this section needs clarification. And that clarification first is not prospective, but it's interpretive of the language in this section, so that it is not effective in terms of changing the provisions of the of section 167, but clarifying the provisions of 167.21. And so moved.
Excellent. Thank you, colleagues, on this for us. Do I see it? No? Okay, Ms. Harcum. Sir.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Rise to, first of all, thank the Charter Revision Commission for all of their hard work and their excellent recommendations, and the various committee chairs who have undertaken that work. I rise to respectfully say that this is really a solution looking for a problem. This rose out of a political disagreement. This was not a budget process issue. It was not a charter confusion issue. This, let's be frank, arose out of a public dispute, a political dispute, and between the county executive and the Board of Legislators. And at the time, Legislator Ryan was quite clear and quite eloquent that the Board of Legislators is a co-equal branch of government. The charter is quite clear that we're a co-equal branch of government. And I'm not going to go into all of those arguments. He was quite eloquent on that and said that many times on this floor. So if we're a co-equal branch of government according to the charter, why do we then need to pass a piece of legislation saying we're equal and then go to the branch that we're trying to be equal with and hope they sign said legislation? To me, that's just not something I can support. So I thank colleagues for all their hard work and good intentions, but I believe the charter is quite clear that the Board of Legislators already is a co-equal branch of government. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Excellent. Any other colleagues on this particular item? Ms. Borger.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I actually rise to clarify something that Legislator Perez said in her introduction of this law. She said that there was a capital budget process required by law. I believe that that's actually a policy that the county executive sets for his committees as they submit their capital projects for the county executive's budget. This is actually stating that although we will go through the evaluative process, that our submissions are not specifically required to go through that process, that our process is to add them during our deliberations on the budget, including the capital budget. So although in practice we will, of course, get the advisory opinions of all of the appropriate departments within the administration, it is not required by law. And in fact, this law is clarifying of that point, that we go through that process. Thank you.
Colleagues on this, Mr. Jenkins.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. On this particular amendment, first, I wanted to commend Legislator Williams for taking the recommendation of the Charter Revision Commission and trying to shape a piece of legislation around it, which, if you look at it, the very last line of it says, this local law is a clarification of the laws of Westchester County. And while I commend Mr. Williams, and I certainly support the concept of saying, well, we can eliminate a discussion where there's an interpretation of the law that suggests that the Westchester County Board of Legislators, the county board as it's referred to in the laws of Westchester County, commonly called the county charter, would be not a solution, just a problem waiting for a solution. It's already the law. And if it's a disagreement, whether it's couched as a political disagreement or not, the prior legislatures to this administration enjoyed, if you will, the ability to add capital projects on the floor following the budget submission guidelines, meaning that we voted on them before we added them to a budget before the first Monday in December. Every time we do a law like this to say, we really mean it this time, I'm concerned, because that particular piece of legislation that says we need to clarify what is being interpreted, not by the elected officials here, but by our esteemed county attorney, to be able to suggest that we need this law to say we're a co-equal branch of government when the charter already says that, the county attorney already has said that on the record many times, I'm concerned. In addition to that, I would point this legislature to Act 2011-190, which is the Planning Board Capital Project Recommendation Guidelines, which was adopted by this board on December 22nd, 2011 in a veto override. And one of the suggestions in this was that it's a very simple act. It says the County Board of Legislators capital project additions included in the finally adopted county budget shall be submitted to the County Planning Board for their review and recommendation no later than 45 days after the enactment of a finally adopted county budget. Now, I understand a local law is stronger than an act, et cetera, but guess what? We already have an act that this board adopted that would resolve that issue. And whether the county attorney or the county executive exercises his or her prerogative to veto something, once this board overrides it, it's the law. It's unfortunate, you might not like it, but it's the law. And we have already had this law on the books. We don't need another local law to say we're a co-equal branch of government. Mr. Chairman, you're sitting in that chair as the chairman of that co-equal branch of government. We do not need this particular piece of legislation, and therefore, I will be also joining Mr. Harcum in voting no on this item, not because I don't appreciate the hard work of Mr. Williams and the other legislators that are trying to resolve a problem that would simply be resolved by simply following the law. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, Mr. Williams.
I don't often speak once, and it's really, really unusual for me to speak twice at these meetings. But I want to actually just put this into context, because I don't think that any of us who would be voting on this law are trying to somehow or other reassert a power that we didn't, or assert a power that we do not have, because I think it's clear to us that we have that ability. But we also, this entire board voted for a charter commission, right? A charter review commission. This entire board voted, I believe, unanimously, and asked that charter commission to go out and to assess where revisions need to be made in the county charter. And I believe that commission came back with draft reports, if I'm not mistaken. And in those draft reports, they told us, here are some of the things that we believe need to be adjusted or to be addressed in the county charter. Now, I don't believe, and if any legislator has done this, it would be great for me to get a copy of it, but I don't believe we sent back any comments saying this particular point that you made should not be in the report. I also ask and wonder how many people went before the Charter Commission and spoke with respect to this particular point and said to them, we really don't need you to address this because we all understand it is the law. We all understand that there is no clarification needed here. I don't know whether anyone has. I don't believe that they did, and I think the record will prove me right. So we can disagree on the fact that we can assert our rights, and there's no doubt about that. But sometimes you need to make adjustments to make things clear, not because, and it's not a surrendering any right, so that you will avoid disputes in the future. And that's all this is. It's all it is. If this issue was not raised in a process which I believe resulted in a lawsuit that was filed through this board, we would not be, the Charter Commission would not have addressed it if it was not a disputed item. And we would not even be here talking about this item. So I suggest to my colleagues that while it is that we can really look at this and say, well, this is a problem that's looking, this is a solution looking for a problem, I suggest to you that we had the problem already. And I suggest to you that the Charter Commission was not there to idly sit there at these meetings and come up with stuff. If we believe that what they were putting on the paper for us to recommend to us should not have been there, we should have gone and told them that. And so I believe that this needs to be clarified, and I stand by the legislation as proposed.
Marzano.
One thing I find in my dual life of being a lawyer and a legislator is vagueness is a problem in legal interpretation. That comes up as a lawyer, that comes as a legislator. You take a look at a piece of legislation, look at a law, and anytime there's vagueness, you know, those gray areas end up getting litigated or debated in legislatures. So what do we have here? We set up a Charter Revision Commission. They watched the debate that was going on publicly and in the courts over this very issue. They recommended that we clear up the vagueness, make some minor changes to the county laws to take what's a little bit vague and make it less vague and clearer. That's all we're doing right here. The Charter Revision Commission did a good job of identifying a problem that was in the newspapers. They saw it. You could not see it. It was litigated. And they went and did a solution on how to clarify this. They sent it to our board. Our committees looked at it, worked on it, and we have a law before us to clear up some vagueness in our county charter. I can't even believe we're having a debate on this. It's as clear as could be. There's some vagueness in the county law. The Charter Revision Committee saw it. Many legislators on both sides of the aisle saw it. Our committee saw it. And now we're going to vote to clarify that. Pretty simple to me. I'm voting yes.
Any other colleagues on this? Jenkins spoke once before, something new and different.
Second round.
I'll yield. I'll grant it, but let it be new and
Oh,
different.
that would be in the rules, Mr. Chairman. Thank you.
It's at the consent of the chair, but Mr. Jenkins, your call. Sir.
I'll take a look at that again. Thank you, though. But thank you for consenting, Mr. Chairman. I just want to point out one thing. I am not sure which other of my colleagues went in front of the Charter Revision Commission. I did. I spent 2 hours with the Charter Revision Commission. So I can speak eloquently on this particular point. And quite frankly, that is part of the reason why we had an act that this board approved over the veto of the county executive, using his legislative power to say how the things the board decided to add through the process, the 17 of us down here, 12 individuals voting for something, how would that move forward? So we created an act to say this is how this should happen. Because there was that vagueness. It wasn't vague that we're a separate body of government. It was vague that said if we add something, you had to go through this particular process, et cetera, and it didn't matter. Because if somebody wanted to turn around and say, yes, you needed to go through the process, that means the following year it should have come up on that process. And it did not. This particular legislation does not address that. It certainly does address the fact that it's clear, it's clarified that we're a separate branch of government. Again, I did go in front of the board of the Charter Commission. I spent several hours with them at that meeting and in additional meetings, whatever questions they asked of me. And by the way, the very first question they asked me, what would I change in the charter? And the county attorney will attest to this. I said, not a thing. Because it's not a question on what's on the piece of paper, it's enforcing what's on that piece of paper. It's the interpretations of that piece of paper. It's not the legislators here. We can always respectfully disagree with each other. And as Mr. Mazzano, the vice chair of this great board, has always recommended us go out and have a soft drink beverage afterwards, right? And I'm sure he will invite us again tonight if we get out before the second game is on Monday Night Football. I'm working trying to get us to the first game. I'm working on trying to get us to the first game.
Mr. Jenkins.
So at the end of the day, Mr. Chairman, I know, again, the good intent of our Charter Revision Commission seeing issues. I know the good intent of Legislator Williams in helping to clarify this. I know the good intent of my great friend, Mr. Mazzano, in trying to help in clarification. But the fact of the matter is, it doesn't matter which pieces of paper that we adopt. If the county executive is just going to ignore them, then we have to take some different action. Thank you.
Thank you. Ladies and gentlemen, a brief comment. We are now closing in on the 12th straight hour that many of us are here. You are, and the people of Westchester are lucky that there are 17 policy wongs sitting in this table, and we can continue all night long. But we have an item before us. To Mr. Burrows, to Mr. Wishney, to Mr. Zuckerman, to the entire Charter Commission, once again, thank you. To constituents out there, look at westchesterlegislators.com, because this debate is just a small piece of what we've been spending week after week and week. To those who feared that that book, that voluminous volume of changes that were recommended, and a non-disagreement with Mr. Jenkins, evidently, that in fact there were changes to be made as recommendations have been acted upon. We've certainly more than lived up to the law and the spirit of what we've done. This is the next in the series of, I will be supportive of. Any time under rule of law you can clarify a discrepancy, in fact, you are pushing that ball favorably down the field. This clarifies it. There should be belt and suspenders, and I would hope that colleagues would be supportive. At this point, Madam Clerk, long roll call on items 7, 3, 4, 5.
Ms. Borgia.
Yes.
Mr. Testa.
Yes.
Mr. Boykin.
Yes.
Mr. Burrows. Mr. Gelfart.
Aye.
Mr. Harkam.
Nay.
Mr. Jenkins.
No.
Mr. Mazzano. Ms. Marcotte.
Aye.
Ms. Parker.
Yes.
Ms. Perez.
Yes.
Ms. Shimsky.
Aye.
Mr. Smith.
Yes.
Ms. Spreckman. Ms. Williams.
Yes.
Mr. Williams.
Yes.
Mr. Chairman.
Aye.
Approved 15-2. Item 7405 from the Committee on Appointments is a resolution appointing Barbara Stevenson as a member of the Westchester County Human Rights Commission for the term January 1, 2014 to December 31, 2016.
Mr. Boykin.
So moved, Mr. Chairman.
On the motion before us, long roll call, please.
Ms. Borgia.
Yes.
Mr. Testa.
Yes.
Mr. Boykin.
Yes.
Mr. Burrows. Mr. Gelfart. Mr. Harkam.
Yes.
Mr. Jenkins.
Yes.
Mr. Mazzano.
Jim?
Ms. Marcotte.
Aye.
Ms. Parker. Ms. Perez. Ms. Shimsky.
Aye.
Mr. Smith.
Yes.
Ms. Spreckman. Ms. Williams.
Yes.
Mr. Williams.
Yes.
Mr. Chairman.
Aye.
Approved 17-0. Item 7440 from the Committee on Labor, Parks, Planning, and Housing. A resolution setting a public hearing on a local law entitled a local law amending local law number 9, 2008 to place limits upon the amount of septage removal and inspection reimbursement offered, clarify how frequently reimbursement can be sought, and extend the effectiveness of its provisions as amended herein. until August 31, 2020.
Mr. Arkham.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. This is simply a renewal of a law we passed in 2008. It's administered by the Department of Environmental Facilities for the sewer districts. In Westchester County, we have about 45,000 septic systems, 7,000 of them.
It's a public hearing. All well done. I think this is just setting the...
Oh, just public hearing. Forgive me, the hour
Oh,
is
you're
late.
practicing. It's wonderful.
Set the date, Pete.
What's the date?
It would be October 27th, I believe, at 7:30, if that...
10:27 at 7:30.
You have given people a
So
reason...
moved.
A reason to check in at that time. Thank you all very much. Do we have any... No, we do, hence 9 hours, 12 hours. At this point, any motion? We'll take the previous long roll call, if that's okay. So ordered.
Approved 17-0. Item 7494 from the committees on...
Over.
Over, Mr. Jenkins. Item 7000 from the Committee on Appointments is a resolution appointing Edward Mahoney as a member of the Westchester County Deferred Compensation Board for the term January 1, 2014 to December 31, 2017.
Mr. Boykin.
So moved, Mr. Chairman.
Take the previous long roll call, if without objection, so ordered.
Approved 17-0. Item 7229 from the Committees on Infrastructure, Budget Appropriations, and Economic Development and Capital Projects, an amended bond act authorizing the issuance of up to $9,200,000 in bonds of the county to finance capital project WD-001 Eastview Distribution Chamber.
Yes, Ms. Markup.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This was the subject of lengthy discussion in the Budget and Appropriations Committee. I'm happy to move it and turn it over to Economic Development.
Smith.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you, Mr. Chair. As was discussed and extensively discussed, this item was previously recommitted. Went through another discussion this morning. This is going to fund the design, construction, management, and construction of a distribution chamber, including the supply mains and connections to access the ultraviolet light from the New York City Department Catskill, Delaware treatment facility in Mount Pleasant. It's primarily going to serve initially the villages of Sleepy Hollow, Tarrytown, and Briarcliff Manor, and the Westchester Joint Waterworks. Potentially, it has the ability, or will have the ability, on further design and investment to support the Water District, County Water District 1 and 3. With that, we move this item over to infrastructure.
Ms. Shimsky.
Okay. Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. As everyone is aware, the last several weeks have been involved with very detailed discussion about improvements to our water delivery system. We held this back previously to make sure that we considered this in relation to the overall global universe of what was happening with the other Water District Number 1 projects and litigation. This does serve an important need. We determined today that all of the various districts and facilities that are supposed to be served by it will receive value for their investment. Everyone agreed that this is a good project to move forward, and therefore infrastructure is happy to vote it out.
Excellent. Colleagues on this item? Otherwise, without objection, we'll take the previous long roll call. So ordered.
Approved 17-0. Item 7315 from the Committees on Legislation and Environment and Energy, a resolution setting a public hearing on a local law amending section 824.341 of the laws of Westchester County, exempting a permit for the town of Putnam Valley from 3-year term limitation for sewage discharge permits.
Ms. Parker. You're setting the public hearing?
Did you say Parker? You did. You looked at me. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
What do you do with this red light?
I'd like to set this public hearing for October 27, 7:30 p.m.
Ms. Parker.
Yes, I concur. Thank you.
You're paying attention. That was a test. Colleagues, on this? Seeing none, we'll take the previous long roll call without objection. So ordered.
Approved 17-0. Item 7414 from the Committees on Infrastructure, Budget and Appropriations, and Environment and Energy, a resolution to set a public hearing on the proposed modification to the Peekskill Sanitary Sewer District by the addition of one parcel of property located in the town of Yorktown.
Ms. Markup?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Setting the public hearing for October 27th?
7:30 p.m.
7:30, yes, thanks.
Excellent, excellent, Mr. Smith, concur. I'm sorry, this would be actually Ms. Shimsky, Infrastructure,
I concur as well.
and Ms. Parker.
I concur.
Excellent. Colleagues, without objection, we'll take the previous long roll call. So ordered.
Approved 17-0. Item 7416 from the Committees on Law and Budget and Appropriations, an act authorizing the county to retain at county expense law firm of Whiteman, Osterman, and Hanna for the provision of legal representation in connection with obtaining New York State reimbursement for medical assistance receipts.
Ms. Markup?
Recipients, I'm sorry.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This was discussed in the Budget and Appropriations Committee, I believe, a few weeks ago. It was also discussed at length with the Law Department. I'm happy to move it for budget, and I'll turn it over to Legislator Williams.
Mr. Williams?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This item is the retention of Whiteman, Osterman, and Hanna, LLP, to provide services in connection with the recovery of medical assistance reimbursement for the county. Apparently, from the state of New York, this is a specialized area of which this law firm is able to and has a track record of obtaining refunds or recoveries for counties around the state. And apparently, based on the information that we have received in the packet, there is potential of between $10 and $15 million of claims that the county could possibly recover due to this services. The county is unable to perform this service in-house because it is a involves complex and technical skills and I believe software that need to be part of this recovery system. The county attorney's office have discussed this with us, and they recommend that this law firm be retained to perform these services, and so moved.
Colleagues, on this item before us? Seeing none, we'll take the previous long roll call. Without objections, so ordered.
Approved 17-0. Item 7423 from the Committees on Law and Budget Appropriations, an act to authorize the county to settle a pending summons filed by the Westchester Industrial Development Agency and enter into a settlement agreement with the City of Yonkers, the Yonkers IDA, and the WIDA, pursuant to which the WIDA will discontinue the summons and all parties will mutually release each other from certain pending claims.
We have a point of personal privilege, I believe, Mr. Jenkins.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. On this particular item, as the CEO president of the IDA in Yonkers, I will be recusing myself from this vote. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Ms. Markup, on the substantive matter before us.
Thank you. This was also discussed in Budget and Appropriations and at length with the Law Committee, so I'll turn it over to Legislator Williams. We'll move it for budget.
Excellent, thank you. Mr. Williams?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This item involves a five-party agreement between the Yonkers IDA, Westchester County IDA, the county, the city of Yonkers, and Morris Builders in connection with some construction of a building on Austin Avenue in Yonkers. The matters that are being settled here are two disputes. There's a rent dispute related to the amount, the recovery of rent by the IDA, Westchester County IDA, and Yonkers claims that part of the rent that's been collected on the ground lease should have been reimbursed to them. The second dispute is over pilot payments that were collected by Yonkers that were due to the county. The parties have entered into negotiations and decided to settle the issue and with mutual releases to each side. And so this legislation is requesting that the County Board of Legislators approve that settlement. And the amounts actually are going to be settled in terms of an offset, a set-off between the claims of the parties. So moved.
Excellent. Colleagues on this item for us, without objection, we'll take the previous long roll call then. Nope. That's right. We had a recusal. Forgive me. Let's do a long roll call, please. Thank you.
Ms. Borgia?
Yes.
Yes.
Mr. Boykin?
Yes.
Mr. Burrows?
Yes.
Mr. Gelfarb?
Aye.
Mr. Harkam?
Yes.
Mr. Maizano?
Yes.
Ms. Marcotte? Ms. Parker?
Yes.
Ms. Perez?
Yes.
Ms. Shimsky?
Aye.
Mr. Smith?
Yes.
Ms. Spreckman? Ms. Williams?
Yes.
Mr. Williams?
Yes.
Mr. Chairman?
Aye.
Approved 16-0. Item 7424 from the Committees on Law and Budget and Appropriations, an act authorizing the county attorney to compromise the claim of the county against Aramark Correctional Services relating to the county finance commissioner to transfer funds from the county's inmate welfare fund from the county's inmate welfare fund account to the county's inmate fund account.
Ms. Marcotte?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I will move this for budget and turn it over to law.
Yes. Mr. Williams?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This particular request for settlement between the County of Westchester and Aramark relates to an audit conducted by the Department of Finance that indicated a shortfall in the inmate commissary accounts at the county jail in the amount of $487,000. The dispute between Aramark and the county. Aramark is the operator of the commissary, and the dispute surrounds how the funds were really accounted for between the inmates that actually purchased items from the commissary and the amounts that were in their account to pay for those amounts. The settlement, as it is, would authorize the county attorney to compromise the county's claims against Aramark in having Aramark paid the sum of $251,000 to settle all the claims that the county has against it, and for the Commissioner of Finance to transfer funds in the amount of $155,000 to from the county's inmate welfare accounts to the county inmate fund account. And these are two accounts that are separately held and administered by the county on behalf of the inmates in the county jail. So moved.
Colleagues on this item? Let's take a long roll call, please.
Ms. Borgia?
Yes.
Mr. Testa?
Yes.
Mr. Boykin?
Yes.
Mr. Burrows? Mr. Gelfarb?
Aye.
Mr. Harkam?
Yep.
Mr. Jenkins?
Yes.
Mr. Maizano? Ms. Marcotte?
Aye.
Ms. Parker?
Yes.
Ms. Perez?
Yes.
Ms. Shimsky?
Aye.
Mr. Smith?
Yes.
Ms. Spreckman? Ms. Williams?
Yes.
Mr. Williams?
Yes.
Mr. Chairman?
Aye.
Approved 17-0. Item 7481 from the Committees on Law and Budget and Appropriations. An act authorizing the county to retain at county expense the Wicks Group for the provision of outside counsel services related to the Westchester County Airport by extending the term of the retainer agreement for an additional one-year term commencing on November 22nd, 2014, and to increase the contract not to exceed amount by an additional $100,000.
Ms. Marcotte?
Happy to move this for budget, and I'll turn it over to Legislator Williams for the law.
Mr. Williams?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The Wicks Group has been retained by the county over the past, I would imagine this is the third contract extension for approximately $100,000 each term, each contract. The Wicks Group actually provide legal advice with respect to the work at the airport, and that involves matters surrounding FAA regulations and the laws involving the operations of the airport, which are specialties that are not at present within the county attorney's office, and therefore there's a necessity for this service by an outside law firm. Based on the discussions that we've had with the Deputy Assistant County Attorney today, we understand that the County Attorney's Office is pretty pleased with the services that they have received from this group, and that it's been very, very valuable to the office to retain this law firm. So accordingly, we move this legislation.
Excellent. Colleagues on this? Seeing none, we'll take the previous long roll call. Objection? So ordered.
Approved 17-0. Item 7511 from the Committees on Infrastructure, Budget Appropriations, and Environment and Energy, a resolution setting a public hearing on the proposed modification to the Sawmill Valley Sanitary Sewer District by the addition of one parcel of property located in the town of Mount Pleasant.
Ms. Markup.
Thank you. Setting the public hearing for October 27th at 7:30 p.m.
Excellent. And Ms. Shimsky, concur?
I concur.
And Ms. Parker?
I concur.
Excellent. Colleagues on this? Without objection, take the previous long roll call. So ordered.
Approved 17-0. Item 7514 from the Committees on Infrastructure, Budget and Appropriations, and Environment and Energy, a resolution setting a public hearing on the proposed modification to the Sawmill Valley Sanitary Sewer District by the removal of one property located in the town of Mount Pleasant.
Ms. Markup.
Thank you. Again, setting the public hearing for October 27th at 7:30.
Excellent. And Ms. Shimsky?
I concur.
And Ms. Parker?
I concur.
Excellent. Colleagues, without objection, we'll take the previous long roll call. So ordered.
Approved 17-0. Item 7517 from the Committees on Budget and Appropriations and Public Safety, an act to authorize an intermunicipal agreement with the County of Nassau, pursuant to which the county, through its Department of Laboratories and Research, will provide trace evidence analysis for the Nassau County Crime Lab.
Ms. Markup.
Thank you. I'm happy to move this for a budget, and I'll turn it over to Legislator Gelfarb for Public Safety.
Mr.
Thank
Gelfarb.
you, Mr. Chairman. We had a discussion today with our Director of Labs and Research. Clearly, our county is fortunate to be able to lend its support and assistance to the County of Nassau, whose lab unfortunately is not quite ready for prime time, it appears. Accordingly, the agreement has worked well on behalf of the taxpayers of Westchester for the last several years. Nassau, again, is requesting our assistance and is willing to enter into a satisfactory agreement with us. So moved.
Excellent. Colleagues on this item before us? Mr. Jenkins.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm a supporter of this particular piece of legislation, but I'm compelled to remind my colleagues that this particular, the labs and research over the periods of years was every year would go through a scenario through budget process of trying to eliminate that. So I'm glad that all of the members of this board on both sides of the aisle determined to continue to support the Department of Labs and Research, both with funding for its staff as well as for capital projects. Thank you.
Okay. Other colleagues on this item? Seeing none, we'll take the previous long roll call. Without objection, so ordered.
Approved 17-0. Item 7537 from the Committees on Budget Appropriations and Legislation, a resolution to set a public hearing on a local law amending subdivision 1 of section 167.61 of the laws of Westchester County to require the county executive to submit and file proposed county budget for capital purposes not later than October 15th of each year, and to submit and file proposed county budget for current purposes not later than November 10th.
Ms. Perez.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'd like to set this public hearing for October 27, 7:30 p.m.
Ms. Marcotte, you concur? Okay, excellent. Colleagues on this, we have everybody here. Good. We'll take the previous long roll call without objection. So ordered.
Approved 17-0. Under special orders, item 7144 from the Committees on Budget and Appropriations and Economic Development and Capital Projects, Law and Infrastructure. An act amending the 2014 County Capital Budget Appropriations for Capital Project WD-103, County Water District Number 1, alternate water supply.
Yes, Ms. Markup.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm happy to move this for the Budget Committee. This, as you know, and many of the legislators here this evening know, was the topic of very lengthy and detailed discussion. I want to thank my colleagues that worked very long and hard on this. And at this point, I'm happy to move it for budget, and I will turn it over to Economic Development.
Mr. Smith.
Thank you. As extensively discussed today and approved, to move this on to law. Thank you.
Okay. Actually, we'll do Ms. Shimsky.
I'm okay with taking law first.
Mr. Williams?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I will try to be brief, but this legislation, and I want
Feel
to
free to
thank all.
take the next, all five together.
Right.
if you choose.
Yes, we will. I will be addressing all five in my comments, and so we will just still move the others as we move along. But this legislation, I want to thank all my colleagues in terms of working together to try to get this moving. Involve the county's compliance with the Federal Safe Drinking Water Act, the secondary disinfection requirements under the long-term to enhanced surface water treatment rule. That rule requires that the county provide treated water in several water districts. The issue here concerned Water District Number 1, which consists of Yonkers, Mount Vernon, Scarsdale, and White Plains. Back in August of 2013, the U.S. Attorney's Office, on behalf of the Environmental Protection Agency, commenced an action against the county for noncompliance with the LT2 rule, and that action has been moving forward in the court system. The Board of Legislators have been working to try to see whether or not we can get to a point where the county can settle this issue and for us to move forward. In that connection, there have been several proposals that have been made over the years to the board, that have been studied over the years by the County Department of Environmental Facilities to cure the problem of providing disinfected, meeting the LT2 requirements. Most of the proposals that have been considered were either, for one reason or another, were not enacted because they just weren't workable. The county has now, the Department of Environmental Facilities came up with another plan through a consultant that they hired. That plan involves 2 UV facilities in White Plains, one at the Orchard Street pumping station and the other at the Central Avenue pumping station. Those facilities would be able to, based on the studies that have been done so far, would be able to satisfy the requirements under the legislation and fulfill the county's obligation. However, they have not been approved so far because they're in the midst of litigation. The costs of constructing these facilities are approximately $9.9 million, and that cost gets charged to the districts, the 4 districts that I mentioned. And so it was important for us to have the discussions about spending money to have those districts involved in the discussion as we move forward with legislation. Over the past about a week or 2 weeks now, we've been in discussions with the municipalities. The message that I can tell you that I've received and many of my colleagues have received is that municipalities want to move forward in providing a solution, an alternative, in supporting an alternative, but however, they do not want to spend significant amount of money before getting approval from the federal government. And so in order to achieve that goal and keep us at least moving forward, we had worked with the county attorney's office, with DEF, and with the municipalities to craft a solution that would require the Board of Legislators to approve the design, the cost of design for the 2 UV facilities, the alternate plan. And in addition to that, for the county attorney to work on negotiating a consent decree with the EPA so that we might be able to get to a settlement. So that's the sum and substance behind the 4 pieces of legislation that's on the agenda tonight. The first act number is 7144, deals with the approval of $765,000 for completion of the design amount. Did I get the right number?
7144 actually is the act amending the capital, it's the budget appropriation itself.
Okay. 7145, sorry.
If you look under number 5, turn the page.
Okay, I was
Yep.
started from the bottom and come up with, okay. But there are 4 pieces of legislation that's required as a part of this package. One would be 7145, which is the last item on the agenda. Item number 5. There are 5 pieces. The item preceding that would be an item, legislation that would approve a resolution that would approve the project itself, because the project has to be approved by the State Comptroller's Office in order for the county to expend money under the state county law. So the items number 7336 and 7311 relate to the amounts that would be expended, or not expended, but the amounts that would be approved, the project that would be approved, so that the county may apply to the state comptroller for approval of the project. The other pieces of legislation relates to the, let me just see, right, to a capital budget amendment that is required. Item number 7146 relates to a capital budget. That's 7144, late at night, relates to a capital budget amendment that has to be made in order to get the funding related to the project in the capital budget, because it was not there. And I think 7146 relate to approval of the IMA for the maximum amounts that would be expended initially.
Good, excellent. Do we have the entire package here?
Yeah, so moved.
Excellent, good. Ms. Shimsky. Thank you, Mr. Williams.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. This set of pieces of legislation involves a very complex set of transactions from an engineering perspective, from a legal perspective, and from a political perspective. We had a situation in which everybody wants clean water. I think that's pretty much a no-brainer, at least around here. But we had issues about how to go about it from an engineering perspective. We also had the political entities whose constituents were within Water District 1 concerned that whatever solution was selected would be part of the settlement with the EPA on the Clean Water Act violation lawsuit. And for that reason, they wanted to make sure that we didn't overstep and do too much until we made this part of a consent decree or some other sort of legal settlement with the EPA. Many people had a hand in this. The legislators representing those municipalities, Legislator Boykin, Legislator L. Williams, Legislator Jenkins, all played a part. There were a number of committee chairs, many people on this floor, on the 9th floor, DEF. The hour's late, so I won't try to name everybody in the building. But I do think that one person in particular should be singled out and recognized for his extraordinary contributions here, and that's Legislator L. Williams, the chair of the Law Committee. Legislator Williams is tax counsel for Citigroup. He negotiates large deals with parties with competing interests for a living. It was a good thing we had him here. His expertise in crafting the solution, his professionalism and persistence in seeing it through were second to none. I don't know if we would have been here tonight without him and the last week of negotiations with the county attorney, whose office also played a yeoman's role in getting this done at this point. Hopefully, we're in a place now, we'll get a design, which we should get approval on, keeping our fingers crossed to solve our Clean Water Act problem. Then we'll be able to go forward. Hopefully, this will stay our fines, which will keep the rest of our taxpayers happy. And everyone will be rid of cryptosporidium, which, even as we speak, is in that water in elevated amounts, just waiting for a big outbreak someday to cause real problems. Hopefully, before that happens, we'll have this whole settlement in place, and as a result, everyone will be much better off. And as I said, the lion's share of that thanks for crafting the final agreement goes with Legislator Williams.
Excellent. Colleagues on this item. Mr. Boykin.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. I too would like to thank Legislator Williams for all his work on this project. Just a little perspective, the evening is late, but for about 50 or more years, the county has managed Water District 1, which includes White Plains, Scarsdale, Mount Vernon, and Yonkers. And several years ago, under the Federal Safe Drinking Waters Act, it was required that all water have ultraviolet treatment. And the northern part of Water District 1, White Plains and Scarsdale, is currently not being treated with the ultraviolet. The lower portion, Mount Vernon and Scarsdale, are receiving the ultraviolet treatment. I know that there have been, over the years, numerous projects brought forth and talked about, including a $100 million project to solve this issue. But we are now at a place that we think we will be able to do this and treat the water for roughly $10 million, a savings of $90 million to the taxpayers of Westchester County. That is significant. And I think that is a very important fact. Working together, we think we've been able to do this. And the legislative pieces that we have before us tonight, $765,584 is for the completion of the design and construction management of this project. During this phase of completing the construction management and design of the project, the county attorney will be going to the EPA to work out a consent decree so that before we spend the rest of the $9 million on this project, we will know that we have assurance that this project will actually be approved by the EPA. And both White Plains and Scarsdale, and I think Mount Vernon and Yonkers have said, we all want to move forward, but we want to make sure that before we spend taxpayers' money, we have assurances that this project will work. And so we have spent a lot of time working through this. When I first came on the board this year, this was one of the first things I talked with my colleagues about, knowing how important this is. I've been meeting with Scarsdale, I've been meeting with White Plains on this issue, and today I sent them the legislation. They both sent back to me that they were so pleased that we will move forward. So I want to tell my colleagues that my two communities are very pleased that we are at this place and we are moving forward. And I want to thank everyone for working together to get this moving. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Jenkins.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I too want to congratulate all the folks that have been working on this, and not just now, Mr. Williams, you, Mr. Chairman, working through this, trying to come up to a solution to this long-running problem. I would point our colleagues to our website, Mr. Chairman, on the Westchester County Board of Legislators Meeting Management Web Portal. Typing in the word WD103 brings us some acts, which began for us for WD103, County District 1, in November of 2010. Where this board, by the way, because I know that there's many times that folks think that things take a long time. November 22nd, 2010, it was presented to the board, and on January 3rd, it was adopted by this board, the first $200,000 installment on a plan for WD 103, which was that alternative water supply. The EPA and in many subsequent conversations, up until last year, Mr. Chairman, insisted on doing a $100 million project. As a matter of fact, the Eastview distribution project that we referenced earlier, that was adopted earlier by this board unanimously, also referred to this particular project, the ultraviolet treatment project, that there was a requirement for this county to spend $100 million. And this legislature, as well as the administration, should all be commended for saying, why should we spend $100 million? Can't another solution come up? Legislator Myers, Legislator Parker's predecessor, and the city of Yonkers brought that up to us, I guess, in July of 2013, and that's how this particular path started. Mr. Chairman, I would like for us, and obviously it's not the time tonight to do this, but certainly we should take a look at the ANC resolution, which was adopted July 18th, 2013, which was for $731,816.68 for GHD consulting engineers. Not because it was an expense that was not necessary, because what it did was in the matter of engineering services in connection with the alternative water supply for the northern section of the Kensico Bronx Pipeline, Water County District Water 1 District include White Plains, Mount Vernon, and Yonkers, Village of Scarsdale, Town of North Castle. And the sub-consultant who was with us this morning was Malcolm Perney, Lynn Starr, and KJM Construction Management. The only reason I bring this particular part up, Mr. Chairman, is because that $731,000 was taken out of operating funds. And it appears from the resolution that it was taken out of operating funds from the Department of Environmental Facilities, which, by the way, would be illegal and wrong. So you need to take a look at that later on. It's not for this particular time, because we should move forward on this particular item. I did have some concerns that I expressed earlier in the committee meeting. Mr. Crane, we love Mr. Crane and for all of his hard work and working through the legal matters for this water district, was able to point out to me that in the act that we had so much discussion about at the committee meeting today, there is not an authorization for the county executive or the county attorney or the Department of Environmental Facilities to enter into any agreement. Mr. Chairman, you talked to me about this as well, that there is not any agreement to do that. So whatever good work that our county attorney does, along with the Department of Environmental Facilities, and certainly with all of the municipalities that have raised concerns about that, they should all be well aware that any agreement, any consent decree would come back to this honorable board for its approval, not only for the money, but also for the agreement itself, if I understand the legislation that's in front of us correctly. So, Mr. Chairman, I will be supporting all the pieces of legislation on this particular matter with that assurance that we have from reviewing the legislation. There are some complexities that are, for all of us through this, whether it's County Law, New York State Law 268, and whether the commissioner has to review, the comptroller has to review, et cetera, et cetera. But for getting this design moving forward, we need to do that. And we really appreciate the talks that we've had with Commissioner Lauro, and again, all the hard work that Legislator Williams and you, Mr. Chairman, have done on this particular item is to be commended. Thank you so much.
Colleagues on this, Ms. Spreckman.
Quickly, I just want to say I am very happy for those, for Lyndon Williams, for Catherine Borgia, for Mary Jane Shimsky, for all of these people. I believe, first of all, in people, the health, welfare, and safety of the people. And we are saving a lot of money by doing the settlement now. And I just am happy that the water is going to be clean and the people will be safe. And thank you, everybody.
Excellent.
Now that's a speech. And to the point. not a lot of BS, my initials.
It is very hard to follow that, but would any colleagues choose at this time? I will. I want to, first of all, thank, there's so many to thank, but, you know, to staff, the Deputy County Executive, to the Chief of our Deputy Chief of Legislative Matters, to our entire staff, Mr. Crane, to the legislators here, as indicated, to all the legislators from the requisite communities, to Mr. Williams, who did put in yeoman's work here, to all the chairs, you know, certainly of the various committees and the legislators that represent the various towns. The bottom line is that this legislature should be very proud of itself. That, in fact, we took a process that it was, as Mr. Jenkins put out there, that's been out there for some time, and we tonight are bringing the next step in the resolution of a matter that really, really does count. A very, very gentle correction. Fortunately, as far as I know at this moment, there are no cryptosporidium spores that have been found in the water. No one needs to be concerned. The water is absolutely clean. But the concern, as Ms. Shimsky indicated, is that, of course, if something does ensue, it's too late at that particular point to do anything about it. So the water is safe. We can all drink it, but we want to keep it that way. And that's what this is about, public health and safety. At the same time, $100 million is nothing to shake a stick at. We have work to save that. There's work the county attorney needs to do. He'll come back to us with a hopeful agreement, and we'll come back with another bond act, and we'll have another opportunity to take in this fall season another bite or two of this apple for sure. But ladies and gentlemen, tonight we have the 5 items before us, one right now, 7144. The hour is late, but the opportunities in front of us. Madam Clerk, long roll call.
Ms. Borgia.
Yes.
Mr. Testa.
Yes.
Mr. Boykin.
Yes.
Mr. Burrows. Mr. Gelfarb.
Aye.
Mr. Harkle.
Yep.
Mr. Jenkins.
Yes.
Mr. Mazzano. Ms. Marcotte. Ms. Parker.
Yes.
Ms. Perez.
Yes.
Ms. Shimsky.
Aye.
Mr. Smith.
Yes.
Ms. Spreckman. Ms. Williams.
Yes.
Mr. Williams. Mr. Chairman.
Aye.
Approved 17-0. Item 7146 from the Committees on Budget and Appropriations, Economic Development and Capital Projects, Law and Infrastructure. An act to increase and improve Westchester County Water District Number 1 facilities to carry out capital project WD-103 at a maximum estimated cost of $9,950,000, to authorize the county to enter into such intermunicipal agreements as may be necessary, and to accept any and all grants of property rights necessary in furtherance thereof.
Ms. Markup.
For budget, so moved.
Smith.
Discuss and approve. Move to law.
Mr. Williams. Ms. Shimsky.
As previously discussed, so moved.
Colleagues, any further discussion on this? Otherwise, we'll take the previous long roll call. Without objection, so ordered.
Approved 17-0. Item 7311 from the Committees on Budget and Appropriations, Economic Development and Capital Projects, Law and Infrastructure, an act to authorize the county board chairman or his authorized designee to execute all instruments and to take all actions reasonable, necessary, and appropriate to petition the New York State Comptroller for an order approving the county's issuance of bonds in an amount not to exceed $9,219,000 for an increase and improvement of facilities of County Water District.
Same four committees. Ms. Markup.
So moved.
Mr. Smith.
As discussed and approved, move to law.
Mr. Williams. Ms. Shimsky.
As previously discussed, so moved.
Discussion on this, otherwise we'll take the previous long roll call. Without objection, so ordered.
Approved 17-0. Item 7336 from the Committees on Budget and Appropriations, Economic Development and Capital Projects, Law and Infrastructure, resolution determining that the proposed increase in improvements of facilities of County Water District Number 1 is in the public interest, as it will help assure ultraviolet treatment of the water supply for the service of area covered by the district, as mandated by the U.S. Environmental Protection Agency pursuant to the Federal Safe Drinking Water Act.
Ms. Markup.
So moved.
Mr. Smith.
As discussed and approved, move to law.
Mr. Williams. Ms. Shimsky.
As previously discussed, so moved.
Further discussion on this? Seeing none, without objection, we'll take the previous long roll call. So ordered.
Approved 17-0. Item 7145 from the Committees on Budget and Appropriations, Economic Development and Capital Projects, Law and Infrastructure, a bond act authorizing the issuance of $765,584 to pay part of the $9,950,000 of bonds of the county to finance the design of capital project WD-103 County Water District Number 1, alternate water supply.
Ms. Markup.
So moved.
Smith.
Discuss and approve, we move to law.
Mr. Williams. Ms. Shimsky.
As previously discussed, so moved.
Colleagues, final comments, thoughts? Otherwise, without objection, we'll take the previous long roll call. So ordered.
Approved 7-0. Motions, resolutions, call of the districts.
Colleagues, Ms. Shimsky.
I'd like to be added to to Elfreda Williams's resolution for Sam A. Wilkins Jr. Mr. Williams was a longtime community activist involved in a lot of activities, including the NAACP. He'll be sorely missed. I'd also like to be added to Legislator Smith's resolution for Irene Zagarelli, the mother, I understand, of Phil Zagarelli, who's currently village manager.
Legislators, we have Ms. Perez, then
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'd like to add Setimio Soni Valenti.
excellent. Mr. Burrows.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Please add me to David Gelfarbs in respect to Rosalie Woodrow.
Mr. Gelfarb, I believe your hand up, sir?
No.
Okay.
Mr. Burrows on that.
Excellent. Mr. Boykin.
Yes, I'd like to be added to Sam A. Wilkins Jr., very big community leader, also a developer, built some wonderful housing in Greenberg.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I too would like to be added to Mr. Wilkins, who also was an office builder as well.
Excellent.
Thank you.
Ms. Williams.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'd like to be added to Mr. Smith's tribute to Irene Zagarelli and Ann Mastandrea.
Very good. And Ms. Parker.
Yes, I'd like to be added to Rosalie Woodrow's. The Woodrows started Woodrow's Jewelers, and their sons now run it, and with their daughter Wendy, and it's one of the pillars of the downtown community in Rye.
Mr. Williams.
Yes, I'd like to be added to Mr. Samuel Wilkins also.
Colleagues, Mr. Maizano, forgive me. Sir.
The hours later, just if you allow me a minute or two, just to talk about a very close friend that passed. You know, people hate politics, right? You hear that all the time in your districts. I'm going to tell you a nice politics story. When I first got involved in politics in the early 90s, I met a lady named Eleanor Botcher. And she was great. You know, she was someone that lived in the New Rochelle, Larchmont area for like 87 years, and she knew everybody, and she became my friend. And I told her I was going to run for mayor of New Rochelle, and she said she would support me. And a lot of people say they're going to support you when you run for office, and everybody works really hard. Well, this woman, Eleanor Botcher, from the first day she said she helped me, worked so hard on all of my campaigns. I figured out that she made tens of thousands of phone calls for me in my career. She became buddies with my mom. And she really was just an incredible I'd go door to door. I'd ring the bell, and someone would come to the door and say, I don't really vote for you. I know Eleanor Botcher. She was one of those people. And every one of you has somebody like that, probably in your career and in your districts. And this was just this fabulous woman, and she was just knew everybody in the community. She was nice to everybody, and she loved New Rochelle. I was going door to door with her in her own neighborhood when I was running for mayor. I said, God, I really love this neighborhood. I'd like to buy a house here. And sure enough, I bought a house 3 houses away from Eleanor. And she always joked that I was the only honest politician she ever met. I said I was going to move into the neighborhood, and I did. But that was a whole different chapter. Now she was my neighbor, and she became Auntie Eleanor to my son, babysitter for my son, cooked dinner for us once a week. They didn't have any family left in this area, so they came to our house for all the holidays. I've had a 20-year friendship with this woman, Eleanor Botcher, who passed away. She had to move to Colorado last year because of dementia, so we lost her, at least as a neighbor last year, and she passed this past week. And lastly, I just say the coolest thing about Eleanor, she was involved in the Polar Bear Club. She used to go swimming in the Long Island Sound at Hudson Park in September, October, November, and sometimes December every year with a hardy bunch of women that did it for like 30 or 40 years. And I'll tell you that all of these women made it into their 80s and 90s. It tells you something. But Eleanor Botcher is one of the best human beings I ever met. And I already missed her because she left last year. But now that she's up in heaven, I'm going to miss her a lot. But the good news is she's back with my mom, and that's a good thing. Thank you.
Mr. Jenkins.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'd just like to be added to to Beretha Elkins with Mr. Williams. Thank you.
With all that said, let's please rise and grant a moment of silence for the passing of these wonderful people. Ms. Borgia?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I move that we adjourn this meeting and reconvene at our regularly scheduled meeting on October 27th at 7 p.m.
Ms. Borgia?
Yes.
Mr. Testa? Yes. Mr. Mazzano? Yes. Mr. Chairman?
Aye. We are adjourned. Bob, good job. Bob.